Hi everyone, welcome to the Rangers Reviews Tactics podcast. Just me, no Adam Thornton this week, but given the significance of yesterday's performance from Rangers in their 3-0 Old Firm win, thought I'd come on anyway and talk through some of the topics that were discussed in the article linked below. As ever, the first place to get all our tactical content is on the Rangers Review website. This is available to members first on YouTube as well. But we're going to talk through what was not only a dominant scoreline, but I think a dominant and deserved win for Rangers over the course yesterday against Celtic. What went right compared to previous Old Firm games? What's Clement changed? Key performers, loads and loads to cover, and we'll try and do as much as we can in this video. So first and foremost, let's look at the XG chart, which you have not seen many of those in Old Firm games, have we, recently from Rangers' point of view? If you're new to these, the larger the indent, the greater the value of chance, and every single indent, reflects a chance. And you can see first and foremost that Rangers really restricted Celtic. And I think a lot of the narrative after this game will be Celtic weren't quite on it, or they didn't have an edge, or whatever it may be. And there's no doubt that I think when you come across for an Old Firm game 14 points ahead, you'll be confident. But I think the story of yesterday's game, rather than it being about Celtic being poor, was that what Rangers did and how they pressed, and some of the framework that they had in place, maybe for the League Cup final, that mistakes let them down on that day. It worked, and it really stopped Celtic from playing. By contrast, Rangers, although they had a lot of shots from range, and we'll come on to that, but that obviously works for them in this game. I don't always think it's a positive, and it's an important consideration when you look ahead to the two upcoming away games that Rangers have, and those are games in which they've struggled. While there was a lot of long-range shots that didn't necessarily have a high chance value, Rangers did create the best chances on the day. That Robin Proper effort was really high value, and they were able to, unlike the League Cup final, when they had a good first half and cancelled Celtic out largely, they were able to get the second goal and continue to play well after the break, and it was pretty comfortable in the end. So we're going to look specifically at how Rangers pressed, what was different to Old Firm games in the past, because obviously Clement was coming into this game without a victory in the fixture, and what we can take away from it. I think the first thing to point out before we go into what changed tactically is that individuals obviously matter so much, and we can get drawn up in talking about formations and where players are on a pitch. But if you've got individuals that can cover a lot more ground, that can cover dual roles, that have the right mentality, someone like Yanis Haji stands out for that yesterday. But you're thinking of Hamza Egeman up front, who obviously has more in terms of legs than Cyril Dessers, Nadim Barami, man-marked Callum McGregor again very successfully, but also, as we'll come on to, won important duels against McGregor and had the physicality to match him in there. Diamandi and Raskin really ran the midfield. But again, if you compare that to previous Rangers midfields in this fixture, often that's been the scene of the crime. But alongside either fullback as well, there was a lot of kind of front foot aggressive players, which I think allowed Rangers to take the game to Celtic instead of sitting off. So there was a tactical change, which we'll come on to. But I think it's important to note that just on the actual topic of player profiles, Rangers were better suited to carrying out their game plan yesterday. So let's look at how Rangers pressed. And first and foremost, Celtic had 60% of the ball, but you'll have seen, everyone, I presume, watching this has watched the game, that largely Rangers were happy in a situation like this. They normally want to trap Liam Scales on the ball, as we'll come on to, but they weren't really pressing the Celtic centre-backs. Now, there's a temptation in games like this to go man for man and be really aggressive, and we saw Rangers do that at Parkhead, as we'll come on to look at in a second, in their 3-0 defeat at the start of the season. And I think that has its place and points, but you need to get everything right. You need to not make any errors, and it just feels it's pretty high risk. And myself and Adam, I think it was on the Tactics show after the 3-0 Old Firm defeat, spoke about the need to kind of maybe go for more of a zonal system. So it goes man for man at points, but it starts in the zone and then instead of kind of being manipulated and taken around the pitch by Celtic's runs, Rangers could protect the spaces and then like kind of lock on, if you will, to Celtic players when the opportunity arose. I'll show what I mean because it's easier than just speaking about it. You can see here that Carter Vickers has the ball. Igaman is kind of cutting the pitch in half, blocking a pass to the other centre back, trying to encourage him to stay on that right hand side. Nadim Barami is man marking Callum McGregor. He's behind him. Often what you've seen Rangers do in this fixture is the number 9 in this situation, Igaman, and the number 10 in this situation, Barami, will rotate and they'll press either centre back, and the following player will cover behind the mark Callum McGregor. But that just hasn't really worked that well because McGregor's a clever player. He can manipulate that. He can run off the back of players. Having that sole focus largely for Barami definitely helped Rangers on the day. So you can see Carter Vickers here encouraged to play down the right, and largely because Celtic's passing options were marked up ahead of the in the midfield and the attack, they often had to play wide or go backwards or go down the sides. And you can see here that Barami's now moved in front of McGregor. Yanis Haji's moved in front of his man Paulo Bernardo, and this is the risky thing that Rangers do. So they're starting in a man-for-man fashion or starting in a hybrid fashion, depended on what was happening. But at times then they had to go and be brave and press the ball while keeping a player in their shadow, kind of at their back. And you can see with Haji here that he knows Bernardo's behind him. He's got to time his jump out to Johnson well, because otherwise he could open up a free pass in the middle of the pitch. But as he does that and he closes down Johnson, you can see that the rest of the Rangers midfield moves over. So Raskin moves over, Diomande moves over. Barami is now in front of McGregor, blocking that pass, even though it's obvious that Johnson's going to go down the line. And the reason this is an important distinction to make is because if we look at what Rangers did in the September Old Firm, they were really aggressive and it worked for about 10 minutes and then they started to get played through. So this is the frame from Celtic's first goal. It was an offside goal. I think Nicholas Kuhn scored. I can't remember. Maybe it was Kyogo and a Kuhn assist. But you can see in this situation, it's actually Connor Barron who's pressing the ball. He's your number 6. He's high up the pitch. It will come on to that. And Rangers are locked on man for man completely. But because they're going full man for man instead of a hybrid man for man, they are kind of being taken apart all over the pitch, if you will, by Celtic. And although the pass here into Callum McGregor isn't a first-time pass, you've seen Celtic do this absolutely tons to Rangers in seasons gone by. A third-man combination to free up Callum McGregor in the middle, who can then go and run into a ton of space. If you look at where Rangers number 6 is in this situation, he's there. I don't think that's Connor Barron's fault. I think that's a tactical instruction to go and lock on and every man to be aggressive. However, speaking more generally, if you want to, I think 2 images that kind of contrast nicely Rangers' plan on that day compared to their 3-0 win yesterday. Speaking at time of recording, their number 6 was here. So they weren't pressing quite as aggressively. They were waiting for Celtic, setting a trap, waiting for normally Scales to fall into that. And then you've still got your number 6 in a zonal kind of central position instead of pressing high up the pitch to try and win the ball quickly, but then leaving that big gap. Because while that could work, and Celtic are a better team at playing out than Rangers, and having Raskin in that zone, I think, gave Rangers a little bit of a fail-safe if their press was played through. Another example here, I think, shows that quite nicely. This is one of the early passes that Liam Scales did get right. I'll play the GIF through a couple of times. But if you can see here, he plays the ball. I think this time it's behind Diomande. Diamande's beaten, that thing we just spoke about where he's trying to keep the player in his shadow. He's playing on that fine line between he's trying to protect the zone while also blocking the pass into the man. But if, for example, you have Hatate and Bernardo, Raskin and Diomande are obviously marking them, and if they just move with those 2 players wherever they go, then you can just create a big gap in the centre of the pitch. And we saw that happen sometimes. A couple of times the Celtic defenders went through, but I guess it's like that is the lesser of 2 evils, because again, as we'll come on to, if that centre back loses the ball, they leave a big gap behind them, and it means that they don't have anyone to pass to. But on this occasion, Scales did manage to play through the midfield. Again, Bayrami's watching McGregor closely. And although it's a poor pass from Hatate in this situation, it's an important distinction that, again, Raskin, rather than sticking tightly to Bernardo, his first thought here is protecting the zone in the centre, getting over to that side of the pitch, being able to pressure Hatate quickly, and then Haji comes up and intercepts the loose pass. So Rangers press, I think, was the story of the day, because they limited Celtic to so few opportunities. And we'll get into a couple more practical examples that show what that looked like. So let's look at Yanis Hagi's goal first. A well-taken goal, and very much an outplaying of what Rangers were trying to do off the ball. So in this situation, it's actually Haji in the number 9 slot, alongside Barrie at number 10. Egerman's out left. I presume that was just after maybe a restart or something. They were just filling in one another's roles for a brief period of time. But again, it's telling here that Haji doesn't press the ball really aggressively and quickly because Rangers want Scales to have the ball. They want to I guess you'd describe it as like press up when the opportunity arises, as opposed to being really aggressive from the first moment. Scales has the ball. He moves forward. You can see all his passing options are taken up. Again, Ridvan's higher than Cherney in this situation, so it must have been after a restart by Rami's Mark and McGregor. The fact that Diomande is so tight on Rio Hatate stops Hatate from playing that third-man combination that we see the Celtic midfield do a lot. So the only real pass on is the pass into Paulo Bernardo, which is the Celtic player you can see in around about the centre circle. And two things I think are important here. One is the position of Raskin, which here is relative to the ball and not the man. And what I mean by that is that he's not going out right away and marking Bernardo man for man, because again, that opens up a big gap, which could allow Scales to play into the feet of Kyogo. Instead, Raskin's kind of waiting, but he knows what's coming, and you can see that he actually sets off to make this interception before the ball is left at the foot of Scales. Haji goes in and pressures him at the right moment. Scales tries this pass, which is cut out, and Raskin, having protected the centre zone first, and now we can go and play man for man because he's reacting to what Celtic have done. He intercepts the ball, and this is a key bit in the move for me as well, because Barami wins the second ball, McGregor. Again, on and off the ball, I think when Rangers haven't man-marked McGregor through a variety of different systems, because it's not just under Clement that we've seen that play out, they've really suffered. But Barami, I thought, stuck to his role really impressively throughout the afternoon. He won the second ball. Raskin went through and goal, and mentioned earlier that Rangers maybe took too many shots from range. And while there's a time to do it, as we'll see for the Yanis Haji strike, I think this is an example of when there's also not a time to do it. Because if Raskin shoots from here, and we saw other Rangers players shoot from this position, you look at Kasper Schmeichel, he's set, you can see the ball. It's pretty straight in relation to the goal. Raskin doesn't have a great angle. He doesn't have the guise of unpredictability. However, he bides his time. A little back, he'll lay off to Yanis Haji. By now, Schmeichel probably doesn't know which foot he's going to hit it with initially until he moves on to it. He's slightly unsighted. You can see his stance here maybe isn't as strong as it was a couple of seconds ago when Nico Raskin had the ball in this position. And it's just a little bit more unpredictable. So I thought, well, that's still not a high XG opportunity. It was an example of an individual in a Rangers shirt working a better shooting opportunity, a better potential for his teammate, as opposed to just being frenetic and shooting from range. But we'll come on to shots from distance before we tie this up. Another important point to mention in this tactical setup is that Rangers kept a +1 at the back, which again allowed them to press up. If you think back to what they were doing at Parkhead when Conor Barron, the number 6, was really high, there was no protection for the midfield at all. And by the time that Callum McGregor broke through, he was running through onto a flat defence that had nothing in the way of protection ahead of it. Rangers' approach here at Ibrox, by being a little bit more staggered, a little bit more patient, setting traps and then pressing really aggressively, I think mitigated Celtic's strengths and simultaneously mitigated Rangers' own weaknesses a little bit in how they pressed across the pitch. Second example is from a Václav Cherney chance, which very nearly ended up in a goal, and again is a good example of how Rangers' pressing approach worked. So Schmeichel rolls about ball out to Scales. Again, you can see from Egerman's positioning that Rangers are encouraging the ball to go down that left-hand side. And again, another important point to mention is, although Johnson and Carter Vickers are free in this example, and at points Celtic would have a free man on the far side, Rangers would be comfortable taking that risk because they know that the passing options are marked up. So, for example, it looks as if Johnson is in a lot of space here, and he is, but if Scales plays that ball over the top to Johnson, then again, Johnson doesn't necessarily have any passing options because they're marked up. Maybe one player is sitting in a zonal system like Nico Raskin, and it gives them the time to move over from side to side defensively if need be, as we'll come on to look at for the third goal. And also, they always had that +1 at the back with Proper and Sterling, both trying to marshal Kyogo's runs. So in this example, Liam Scales takes the ball forward, and you can see again the reason that Cherney and Bairami are not going to press the ball is because Rangers are happy with this situation. If Bairami goes to press the ball, then Scales plays the ball probably square to Cal McGregor, and Cal McGregor is a much bigger threat running with the ball in this situation than Liam Scales. Václav Cherney, similarly, if he moves up from his man, I think Rio Hatate in this example, or Greg Taylor, who's out of shot. It was interesting that Celtic actually kept the fullbacks wide, and I don't know if I'd be surprised if they do that again in the next Old Firm game, because I think it made their build-up a little bit more predictable. But the two players highlighted are Raskin and Diomande. And this, I might not have made the hybrid man-for-man point very well, but hopefully this frame sums it up. Diomande and Raskin both have the man that they're marking on their outside shoulder, but they're blending that responsibility between protecting the centre first while simultaneously blocking passes into the two Celtic players. So you can see here that they're guarding the centre while trying to block passes for Nico Raskin's case into Paulo Bernardo, for Mohamed Diamande's case into Rio Hatate. Scales again kind of delays on the ball. Diomande intercepts it, and this is the individual point as well, because Diomande intercepts the first pass. He then goes and wins a tackle against Hatate. You can see that Rangers have the +1 at the back, which gives them a little bit more coverage. You can see Nico Raskin is behind as well. So even if Hatate wins that ball, Rangers still do have the man advantage. But Diomande does brilliantly to win two duels. Rangers need the individuals to kind of play this pressing system approach, and they did in the middle of the park. Raskin then plays a ball, and you can see that Cherney is set through on goal. But if we go back to this frame here, just before Scales plays that pass, look at where Greg Taylor is, look at where Liam Scales is, look at the configuration of the Celtic back four. Cherney is staying in that position because he's gambling. Again, if the ball goes wide to Taylor, Rangers probably have a bit of time to recover. The passing options are marked up. Cherney stays high, he gambles, he's quicker than Scales, although he's probably not the fastest player on the pitch, Václav Cherney, and he's sent through on goal, and he's really unlucky to not make it 2-0. But again, I thought that example, a really good example of just what Rangers were trying to do. When Celtic did manage to get the ball to their fullback, and they did on a couple of occasions, or play it wide, I thought both Chefty and Ridvan did well, and they took risks. But again, I think this ties in with the theme of the day, that often in these games it's felt like, really ever since the 3-0 game, when Postecoglou's Celtic beat Van Bronckhorst Rangers 3-0, those rotations that Celtic do down the side in the midfield, it's always felt that Rangers are on the back foot. Whereas here, because they weren't going full man for man, because again, look at Raskin here, he's protecting the zone first and then going out to press the man once he knows that the centre isn't going to be exploited. This just gave Rangers a little bit more, what would you say, solidity in their shape off the ball. Pass from Johnson down the line to Luke McCowan, who's moved out from the centre of the pitch, happens after Celtic have played out from pressure on the other side. They did manage to do that on occasion, but you'll know what happens by now. Chefty intercepts the ball. But look at the fact that he's leaving a man on his outside. I don't know if it's Kuhn or if Kuhn had come off the pitch by this point. Playing on the front foot, you could retreat here. You could retreat, and then maybe Raskin's a little bit slow to Luke McCowan, and suddenly Rangers are on the back foot. Instead, throughout the day, both their fullbacks played on the front foot and took advantage of the space that was left in return. Chefty from here, I think he got a little bit fortuitous with the cross, but Danilo was where he should be, in between the sticks. And after 80 minutes, if your left back's doing that, then I think you're doing something right in a game. This was another example in the first half from Ridvan Yilmaz. Again, on this occasion, Celtic have moved the ball from right to left. I think the ball is there's Rio Hatate in this situation. Greg Taylor and Maida are both by Ridvan. You see the risk of Rangers' approach here, because Cherney is trying to block that pass. He's trying to stop the ball from going into Taylor. However, Ridvan's effectively in a 2v1, and if the ball gets through here, then Rangers are going to concede an attack into space. Again, importantly, they have that 2v1 at the back, at centre-back, which gives them an extra man should that be required. But it isn't, because Ridvan intercepts it, he plays on the front foot, takes a shot when that pass to Igaman is probably better suited. But that was a real pattern of the day. The mix, I think, again, this frame shows it really well with Nico Raskin starting in that zonal position, starting protecting the centre of the pitch, not being at the mercy of Celtic's rotation, not just following Celtic players wherever they went on the pitch, but waiting for the opportune moment to press. And the good example of that in the cup final was the opening goal. I've not got it to hand, but if you cast your mind back to or watch it back to how Bayrami intercepts the square pass from Greg Taylor, and you look at the positioning of Václav Černý, he doesn't actually follow Taylor into the middle of the pitch. He waits, he protects his own first, and then when it's the time to jump up man for man, Rangers do just that. Just finally, I thought it was actually important to mention something I thought Liam Kelly did really well, which was working with the ball at his feet. Rangers still are they a little bit direct in this fixture? I think so. They could have done with a few more runs in behind at points, but it's difficult to be critical after a 3-0 victory. You saw Rangers go backwards quite consistently in these positions, trying to attract this aggressive Celtic press. But while Kelly at times went direct into the front line, quite often he was targeting Chefty. And the reason I think he was targeting Chefty was because of this. He knew he could go over the top of Nicholas Kuhn, who, as you can see here, is pressing forwards. He knew that could sometimes attract Alistair Johnson from right back. And if Rangers could get it right, as they did on this occasion, it would give him a bit more of a platform to build up the pitch instead of just going long and then trying to win second balls. And on this occasion, you can see as a result of that, Chefty played the ball into Bayrami. Rangers have a 5v4 against the Celtic defence, which is disjointed. And there was lots of these moments, possibilities that they weren't quite able to take advantage of. Černý hit the post and he hit the crossbar. There was a number of shooting positions that Rangers maybe could have done with finding an extra pass in. That Ridvan example from a moment ago when Igaman was through on goal is a good example. But they obviously managed to score 3 goals on the day. But I thought that was just a nice little detail, the way that Rangers were trying to build up as opposed to just going directly. I think that's everything I have to say. So kind of in summary, I think, why did Rangers look a lot better? Because their press and structure gave them a bit more security. They could still be really aggressive, but they could be aggressive into space. They weren't totally torn apart by Celtic's rotations. They took risks, and the risks went in their favour on that day. But they also just defended really well, pressed as a team, got that line between being zonal and man for man. They often started in zonal positions like this, waiting for the right time to jump out to players, as opposed to starting their press and shape by just going man for man with the Celtic in midfield and attack. And that led to them conceding really nothing at all. Kyogo had that offside goal, which was marginal. Dujon Sterling generally dealt with his runs well throughout the day, but definitely a platform for Clermont to build on. I guess the question now is, how does that translate away from home? I think that propensity to shoot often and not sustain pressure around the opposition goal hasn't helped Rangers on the road. Not least because the game becomes more end-to-end, it becomes more scattered. And we saw against Motherwell and St Mirren that I don't think that necessarily suits the Rangers' defence at the moment. They could do with a little bit more control like they had at Ross County, when I guess they got a couple of early goals. So we shall see, but a performance for Rangers to build on, a really dominant Old Firm display. Clermont got it absolutely spot on, you've got to say as well, with his decisions to play Ridvan a left back at right back across the pitch. His selections were justified, and a good day for him and for Rangers. You can read, if you I've not had enough, which I presume you have, of Rangers and Tactics, you can read the full piece that we published on the Rangers review about the game in the comments below. Until then, thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe and join our YouTube members channel for $2.99 a month for 3 to 5 videos extra like this every single week. But until next time, thanks for watching, and we'll speak to you soon.